When my mother wed Michael, I found myself at a loss for thoughts. Initially, everything felt utterly unfamiliar. He was unlike the men I had envisioned her with, a stark contrast to the father I had always dreamed of. He spoke in gentle tones, exhibiting a patience that surprised me, accompanied by a warm smile that never fully illuminated his eyes, as if there were deeper emotions lurking just beneath the surface, eluding my comprehension. I often found myself questioning whether he truly experienced happiness or if he was merely acting, fulfilling the role my mother required of him. Initially, I steered clear of him. It wasn't that I held any animosity towards him. It was simply a matter of discomfort. He lacked children of his own, and I sensed he grappled with how to navigate his interactions with me. Occasionally, during our dinners, he would share details about his current project, and I would sit in silence, responding with brief, one-word replies when it seemed appropriate. It was evident that he was making an effort. He endeavored to embody the kind-hearted figure willing to assume the paternal role, yet I found myself uncertain about whether I was ready to embrace that possibility. Grace was preoccupied with her work and the nuances of newlywed life, leaving Michael and me to navigate the house together on certain days, feeling somewhat like an island unto ourselves. The atmosphere was tinged with awkwardness, yet the silence held a certain ease, reminiscent of two individuals quietly studying one another from a distance, both hesitant to bridge the gap that lay between them. It was the small gestures that caught my attention initially, like the way he would prepare my favorite breakfast on those early mornings when Grace was at work, or how he would inquire about my school day. His interest in my response is palpable and sincere. It wasn't extraordinary, yet it held a certain charm. Having someone inquire about my thoughts was a novel experience for me. It felt peculiar, yet not unpleasant. It was one evening, perhaps a month after their wedding, that I sensed a change in the air. With Grace summoned for an urgent matter at work, it was just Michael and me left to share dinner. It seems the evening is reserved for just the two of us, doesn't it? As he arranged the table, he remarked, "I believe I recall your fondness for lasagna. I trust one haven't made a mistake." A soft laugh escaped me as I recalled the Grace-ent he attempted to craft lasagna solo, a venture that turned out to be more of a calamity than a culinary triumph. "I'll be the judge of that," I declared, taking a seat at the table, attempting to suppress the faint smile that danced at the corners of my mouth. We sat in silence for a few Grace-scenes, and then, as if sensing my quiet scrutiny, he broke the stillness with a question. "How's school going, by the way? It seems we haven't delved into that topic extensively." He had posed the question before, yet there was an unmistakable quality to his inquiry this time. It was neither hurried nor driven by duty. Instead, it carried the essence of genuine curiosity. "All right, I suppose," I said, absently prodding the lasagna with my fork, my mind swirling with uncertainty about how to reply. He sat opposite me, gazing with that familiar, gentle smile. "What is that supposed to mean? Is everything okay?" he inquired, his voice gentler this time. For a fleeting Grace-ent, I found myself hesitating. Should I share with him the challenges I faced at school? The weight of conformity? Did the solitude grow more burdensome with each passing day? A stirring within me, his quiet attention made me feel safe enough to open up, despite my uncertainty about the reason, and so I found myself doing just that. After what felt like an eternity, I finally sensed that someone was genuinely attuned to my words. Michael remained silent, refraining from any immediate attempts to resolve the situation. He simply listened, nodding now and then, as if he grasped the essence of my words without the necessity for elaborate explanations. The night unfolded without any grand revelations, yet it held a certain uniqueness. A sense of lightness enveloped me, as if someone had finally looked into my soul, truly recognizing me for the first time. The shift was subtle, yet it stirred a curiosity within me, prompting thoughts of whether this budding connection could evolve into something deeper. I hadn't anticipated much from it, yet an undeniable sense lingered that something was subtly shifting beneath the surface. That evening after dinner, as we both assisted in the cleanup, the silence was not oppressive. Rather, it was a lightness I hadn't experienced in quite some time. Perhaps that was the catalyst for everything that followed. As the months unfolded, the once palpable awkwardness that lingered between Michael and me gradually began to dissipate. It wasn't as though we had become instant best friends. Rather, it felt as if we had discovered a unique connection. We shared our quiet gray scenes, and we engaged in meaningful conversations. At times, their discussions meandered through the trivial, yet on other occasions, they delved into matters of significance. Gradually, we established a rhythm, a silent agreement that transformed our existence from mere cohabitance beneath one roof to a genuine sense of kinship. He persisted in preparing breakfast on the weekends, and I discovered a growing anticipation for it, even if I didn't always acknowledge that feeling. At times, I would assist him in peeling vegetables, arranging the table, tasks that seemed so commonplace, yet somehow carried a weight of significance. In our time together, an aura of tranquility enveloped us, as if the very essence of the house transformed into a serene haven during those fleeting gray scenes we shared. On a Saturday morning, I found myself seated at the kitchen table, my book laid open before me. Michael was immersed in the art of cooking, experimenting with a new recipe that piqued his curiosity. The subtle aroma of garlic mingled with an elusive scent that danced just beyond my grasp. Engrossed in my tasks, I failed to perceive his presence beside me, his eyes resting on me for a heartbeat longer than what felt appropriate. As I raised my gaze, he swiftly redirected his focus to the stove. "Are you all right?" he inquired, his tone gentler than normal. I nodded, yet deep down, I harbored a lingering uncertainty about my own conviction. My thoughts swirled with the complexities of school, friendships, and the chaotic journey of adolescence, as I grappled with the quest for identity and belonging. I doubted he would grasp it, so I merely smiled and offered a brief, affirmative response, "Just busy." Michael appeared to detect the falsehood, or perhaps it was merely a paternal instinct awakening within him. His gaze softened, and rather than pressing me further, he returned to his cooking, permitting the gray scent to hang in the air. A few gray scenes later, he pivoted and placed a plate before me, the inviting aroma of freshly toasted bread and eggs wafting through the air. Uncertain of the reasons, I found that small gesture, his silent comprehension, and his refusal to press me for answers drew me nearer to him. He became more than a stepfather, more than merely a man sharing our home. A sense of depth was beginning to emerge, an unexpected revelation stirring within me. "Thank you," I replied, grasping my fork. "This appears quite appealing." "Good, I'm glad you like it," he replied, a smile gracing his lips, yet he chose to say nothing further. In his smile there was an undeniable warmth that suggested he truly cared, even if he lacked all the answers. We dined in quietude, the clamor of the household fading into this serene oasis. It was neither uncomfortable nor forced. It unfolded effortlessly, yet it transcended mere understanding, a sensation that enveloped me, leaving me in a state of uncertainty about its true nature. A burgeoning sense of trust and companionship blossomed in those fleeting gray scenes. It dawned on me that Michael had transformed into a figure I depended on in ways I had yet to acknowledge. It wasn't merely the small gestures, such as preparing breakfast or mending things around the house. It was the serene assurance of his presence, a silent understanding that required no words to articulate. There were gray scenes when I yearned to reach out to him, to express the burdens that had been pressing on my mind, thoughts I struggled to articulate to Grace. Yet, as I prepared to speak, a gray scent of uncertainty would grip me. A persistent whisper lingered in the recesses of my mind, urging me to maintain my distance, to refrain from getting too close. After all, he remained my stepfather, and there were boundaries that must not be transgressed. Yet, despite my efforts to maintain distance, there was an undeniable allure in his presence, the way he listened, the way he treated me, drawing me closer with each passing gray scent. As the days unfolded, I discovered that I felt more comfortable being around him. It struck me how effortlessly we could converse about the small details, school assignments, trivial tidbits, the novels I was immersed in. It lacked depth, yet it was sufficient to evoke a sense of shared connection, even if I couldn't quite grasp its essence. One evening after dinner, as the house settled into a serene hush and Grace retired early for her work, Michael and I found ourselves in the living room. I nestled into my book, lost in its pages, while he sat nearby, eyes on the screen. Yet his mind seemed to wander far from the documentary playing before him. In our shared solitude, we found ourselves adrift in contemplation, enveloped in a cocoon of quietude. I found myself stealing glances at him from time to time, observing how his expression would soften when he believed he was unseen. It was in gray scenes such as these that I came to understand he had transcended the role of merely being a good stepfather. At some point in our journey, it seems we transformed into something deeper for one another, a connection that remained unvoiced, unrecognized, yet palpably present. Uncertainty lingered within me, leaving my feelings in a state of ambiguity. Uncertainty loomed over me, yet I sensed a palpable change in the air between us, a transformation that carried weight and meaning. It was only with the arrival of winter that the world around me started to change in ways I had never foreseen. The days dwindled and the outside air took on a refreshing bite, yet within the confines of the house, a comforting warmth enveloped everything, breathing life into its very essence. Perhaps it was the impending holidays, or perhaps it was something else entirely. It was the subtle shift that had occurred between Michael and me, yet I began to sense a deeper connection, something more substantial and palpable. Grace had been toiling away once more, her typical hours extending further as she endeavored to balance the demands of her career and the duties of home. As the holiday season approached, she grew increasingly distracted and distant, leaving Michael and me alone together more frequently than usual. Initially, it posed no issue. In truth, I embraced it. The familiar rhythm of our days unfolded with Michael at the stove, while I lingered nearby, a silent observer. In those gray scenes, we would share the occasional joke or smile, weaving a tapestry of comfort that enveloped me. One evening, just before Christmas, I sensed a change, an elusive quality that I couldn't immediately identify. Yet it hung in the air between us, a tension that had not existed prior. The hour was late, and we had just completed the task of tidying up after dinner. Michael lounged in the living room, idly flicking through the channels on the television. My homework awaited, yet the words danced on the page, eluding my grasp as my thoughts drifted elsewhere. I cast a sidelong glance at him, observing how he unconsciously rubbed his forehead, the subtle lines of fatigue etched across his features. He had been toiling relentlessly, and I found myself pondering whether it was the strain of the festive season, or some other unseen burden that was taking its toll on him. "Michael," I inquired gently, "is everything all right with you?" He looked up, taken aback. "Indeed," he responded, a smile gracing his lips, though it appeared more forced than typical. It was evident he was attempting to conceal it, yet within his gaze lingered a subtle melancholy that had not existed previously. "I can tell," I remarked, placing my homework aside. "Lately, you appear to be a shadow of your usual self." He let out a soft chuckle, though the sound carried an edge that suggested it wasn't entirely sincere. "It's merely the routine tasks that come with the job." I refrained from probing deeper, uncertain of the reason, yet sensing that I was treading upon ground I was not meant to traverse. Still, I couldn't shake the observation of how significantly he had transformed since our initial, somewhat clumsy dinner together. The bond that linked us, initially delicate, had evolved into something more profound, more intense. I found myself able to converse with him about matters I had kept hidden from everyone else, even those I hadn't confided in my mother. Yet, there remained words that eluded my lips. Fear gripped me at the thought of voicing those words, as if their utterance could shatter the delicate balance we had painstakingly crafted through the passage of time. As I glanced back at Michael, I found him lost in thought, his eyes fixed on the window a world away. He remained oblivious to my gaze upon him. There was a certain quality in the way he gazed at the world outside that window, a blend of yearning and a hint of being adrift, that awakened something deep within me. In that gray scent, a peculiar sense of empathy washed over me, an awareness of the loneliness that could still envelop him, despite being surrounded by those who cared deeply. I rose from my seat and made my way to the couch, settling down next to him. Initially, silence enveloped us, yet, as if guided by an unseen force, I found myself resting my head upon his shoulder. I was unaware of my motivations. It simply lacked significance. The plan was set in motion. It wasn't an idea I had actively contemplated, yet in that instant it seemed perfectly aligned. He stiffened and I sensed it, but just for an instant. His body relaxed after a few gray scenes, and he remained close. The warmth of his body enveloped me, the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest as he breathed creating a serene atmosphere. And in that gray scent, I experienced a tranquility I hadn't known in ages. "Thank you for everything, Michael," I murmured, uncertain whether my words reached him. For an extended period he remained silent. He remained still, his arms softly touching mine, as we both embraced the quietude around us. The rhythmic ticking of the clock echoed softly in the background, a persistent reminder of time's relentless march onward. In that instant it seemed as though time had come to a complete standstill. We existed in a delicate bubble, distanced from all that surrounded us, removed from the world, and sheltered from the uncertainties and intricacies of our lives. At last, when he found his voice, it emerged softly, tinged with a hint of uncertainty. No need to express gratitude for that. I had so much more to express, yet I held back. I merely nodded, feeling my eyelids grow heavy as the comforting warmth of the room enveloped me. The silent bond that tied us together had deepened, becoming increasingly impossible to ignore. I started to understand that, in certain respects, I was depending on him more than I had ever been willing to acknowledge. Despite my efforts to dismiss it, I understood that my feelings were rooted in more than just the fact that he was my stepfather. There existed a profound essence, an enigmatic quality that eluded my grasp, one I was neither prepared to label nor comprehend. As I succumbed to slumber on the couch next to him, an unsettling sensation lingered within me, a premonition of an impending event, something monumental, and I found myself at a loss for how to avert it. As winter descended, I became acutely aware that a transformation was underway. The days dwindled, the chill of the outside world creeping in. Yet within the walls of the house, a warmth blossomed, a vibrant pulse of life. Perhaps it was the impending holidays that stirred my emotions, or perhaps it was the subtle shifts that had occurred between Michael and me, but I began to sense a deeper connection, something undeniably genuine. Grace had been working late more frequently lately, yet this time I sensed a widening chasm between us. She was preoccupied, ensnared by her duties, which left Michael and me in each other's company more frequently than before. Initially, it posed no issue. In truth, I embraced it with open arms. The familiar rhythm of our days unfolded with Michael at the stove, while I observed in silence, our exchanges punctuated by laughter and shared glances, weaving a tapestry of comfort in my life. Yet one evening just prior to Christmas, I observed something unusual. Though nothing appeared different on the surface, an unusual, unarticulated tension lingered in the atmosphere, a subtle heaviness that had not existed previously. The hour was late, and we had just completed the task of tidying up after our evening meal. Michael lounged in the living room, idly flipping through the channels on the television. Though I knew I ought to be immersed in my homework, my thoughts danced away, refusing to settle. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, swirling around school, my mother, and the myriad of everything else. I cast a sidelong glance in his direction. He was gazing out the window, his brow knitted in concentration, as though adrift in contemplation. What once was had vanished, supplanted by a weightier presence. Though I couldn't fully grasp the situation, it was evident that he was in distress. "Michael," I murmured, my voice soft, "are you all right?" He glanced upward, taken aback, and swiftly attempted to conceal his surprise behind a smile. "Indeed," he murmured, a hint of fatigue in his voice, yet his eyes betrayed no such weariness. "The workload has been quite demanding lately." I nodded, yet I sensed there was something deeper at play. His words held a weight, and the way he averted his gaze suggested an inner burden he was reluctant to share. I refrained from applying any pressure, yet the shift was impossible to overlook. An emptiness lingered in that space now, a void that had not been present before. As much as I loathed to acknowledge it, I too felt its weight. A change had occurred between us, a nuance, an unvoiced understanding, yet it was undeniably tangible. We lingered in quietude for a time, the atmosphere becoming chillier in the void left by unspoken thoughts. The sole sound that filled the air was the rhythmic ticking of the clock mounted on the wall. The incessant whirl of my thoughts became unbearable, a relentless cycle from which I could find no escape. I rose from my seat and made my way to where he sat, an inexplicable urge propelling me onward. Upon reaching him, I settled beside him on the couch, mere inches apart. Silence enveloped us as we sat together side by side, a palpable tension in the air, as if we were poised for an event yet to unfold. In a gray scent of spontaneity, I sat beside him in silence, appreciating the shared quiet. It was not a matter of intention, nor was it a scenario I had orchestrated. Yet, the gray scent I took that step, an inexplicable sense of rightness enveloped me. For a fleeting instant he tensed, his form becoming unyielding, yet he chose not to withdraw. In that gray scent, he eased his tension slightly, and I could sense his warmth enveloping me. For an extended silence, he remained quiet and I followed suit. The silence enveloped us, heavy with unspoken words. The sole sound was the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest with each breath he took. His presence enveloped me, more intense than ever, while everything else seemed to dissolve into the background. "Thank you for everything, Michael," I murmured, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. He took his time before responding. He merely rested his hand on mine with a soft touch. The gray scent lingered, unhurried and free from any pressing urgency to disrupt its tranquility. He allowed the silence to stretch, as if he were anticipating my next words, or perhaps hoping to unearth the right response within himself. After what seemed like a lifetime, he finally uttered a word, his tone soft and deliberate. No need for gratitude on that front. I yearned to express more, to articulate the depth of my feelings, to convey the significance of it all, and the profound impact he had on my life. Yet the words eluded me. In that instant, it dawned on me just how deeply I had come to depend on him, how profoundly I required his presence, more than I had ever been willing to acknowledge. Yet I was aware of another truth. I reminded myself of the boundaries between us, of what family means. The sudden creak of the front door shattered the stillness that enveloped the room. It was Mother returning from her day at work. We stood still, taken aback, as she entered the living room. "What's happening?" she inquired, her gaze sweeping across the room. I found myself in pursuit of any indication of the events that had transpired. Michael rose swiftly, retreating as though the world around him remained untouched. I remained on the couch, my heart pounding, caught in a whirlwind of uncertainty about my next move. Grace glanced at us, and for a fleeting instant, I believed she might perceive it, the chasm that lay between us, the silent strain, but she remained oblivious. She cast a fleeting look between us, aware that something was amiss, yet unable to identify the source of her unease. "Everything's fine," Michael said, his voice steady yet devoid of its Michaelary warmth. Grace refrained from probing deeper, yet I sensed her awareness of the shift, even if she couldn't quite grasp its nature. She let her bag fall to the floor and glided toward the kitchen, leaving the two of us enveloped in an awkward silence. As she departed, it struck me that this peculiar, intricate gray scent marked a pivotal shift. The past was a distant memory, forever altered beyond the reach of any of us. Me, Michael, or anyone else. Uncertainty loomed over me, leaving me in suspense about what would unfold next. Uncertainty loomed over me, a heavy cloud of doubt about whether it could be mended. Yet amidst the confusion, one truth stood clear. My mother would face a decision that could change everything. Unbeknownst to her, a choice loomed on the horizon, between me and Michael, between her desires and the stark reality that awaited. I found myself uncertain about whom she would ultimately select. Uncertainty clouded my decision on whom to select.